How was the short film that I saw you on recently on Instagram?
Um, yeah,
Was that a short?
yeah. It was a short. I did a short mixed in there. Uh it was kind of this really interesting process, very different to working with you on your project. It was absolute chaos. But the thing that made it really fulfilling and satisfying for me in the end was knowing that the director and writer behind the project, so he's Russian, so English is his second language. So he's already, but the minute I met him, um, I just, all the magic of why I love film, like, hits me. It's like the having someone's vision and seeing that they're authentic and passionate and creative and they're collaborating and um, all that stuff. I just instantly everything else drops away. I just go, oh wow, I love this person. I love what they're doing. I'm so happy to be here with other creatives.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was crazy, but in the end, I'm really thrilled that I got to be part of it. And I think there'll be some real magic in there. So, I haven't seen any. I saw snippets, but yeah, the content was different to yours. But I feel like, yeah, feel like I did my job. Let's just put it that way.
Awesome.
So, anyway, we'll see. I'll show you when it's done.
It's also I'm super excited to like see you guys doing more stuff. I want to see what your next projects are.
Yeah, yeah. I have a feature audition coming up this week, so I'm just sort of stepping into the shoes of an entirely different character. So that's I'm really enjoying this one actually.
How do you prepare?
Actually, you don't know Tristan. I don't know why I was about to bring that up. How do I prepare for this one? I'm actually working with Tristan, who is a friend of mine, but an incredible talent. And we work really similarly, and actually, we just trust each other so much. And I think I've been kind of energetically putting it out there to find the right coach for me. Obviously, over 20 years, I've had plenty of teachers and coaches, and everyone works really differently. And sometimes I feel like things can become technical and really in your head. And actually, that's not a really good um, way for me to work. First, I need to really find out what drives this person and where that is truthful for me. And then once I know that, then I can maybe go do the technical sort of heady stuff. Um, so yeah, I think like it's nice to work with him. We sort of get each other and we're starting from just real core. What's going on for me? How does that parallel? How can we intertwine those? How can I bring that? And I feel like it's an invitation to bring all of me. Whereas sometimes I feel like we can try and push a part of ourselves away to become something other than who or what we are. And I think in a way that's a disservice to the character. And doesn't mean all of it needs to be shown, but it just feels like you're bringing all of you plus more. Mm.
Gotcha. And does that sort of way of thinking? Because I remember when we had that first audition or the only audition, like you came with a script and it like had markings on it and notes. Are those
Mm.
notes sort of like that same breakdown?
The script is covered, so there's lots of notes and there's lots of thoughts and there's all my initial impressions, which definitely would have gone onto our script. And there might be an initial sort of layer for this particular project. I mean, for me personally, I will always try and start with the truth. So I don't think that's differed between, say, your project and this project.
I guess what I'm trying to get
Kristen,
at
you've got
is like the
that
way.
even.
Gotcha. So it's, I mean, like what's separating like the script breakdown to like the work that you're doing with Tristan,
I feel like
or
I'm
is it the
spending
same?
more without rushing. So I've got time. I've got a little bit of
Okay.
time,
Yep.
so I have the luxury to not have to lock choices in before
Gotcha.
turning up. Often we don't have much time, so I quickly make choices that I feel will serve the story and the character. And I will get around to doing that this week. But the last week, I've just really allowed myself to have it sit in me, not lock anything in, explore what comes up organically, and weave that in. Uh, yeah. And then this week, I will definitely have to do all the practical things, really get the lines down, make some conscious choices, making sure the arc's going to be there, possibly questioning some of, the doings, which will be a more, cerebral. Uh, I'll consciously sort of look at that and go, okay, where's the scene starting? Where's it ending? What's the journey in between?
Can you sort of like run me through like an example of how that's led to you making a decision with performance, just so I can like wrap my head around it?
So scene usually, well, it must start in one place and end in another. A well-written scene will start in one place and end in another. If that hasn't happened, then it's just bad writing. Uh, and usually, when something's resolved or not resolved, that will be the end of that scene, and then you will move on. Did you get what you wanted, or did you not get what you want? Are you hopeful to start and then hopeless at the end, or are you feeling um, possibly like untrusting and then you're trusting, or did you get your wish fulfilled basically, or didn't you? That's what drives us.
That's super
So I do
interesting.
often have a look at, yeah, always start, like, having a look at where is the character, and I'm mindful of looking at the moment before, what's just happened to bring this character to this scene right now at this time. Something has to have just happened that has driven them to make this next moment happen. So then you're alive from the beginning.
It's, Crossroads was a really sort of interesting process because I feel like I sort of understood writing by the end of it. I just realized like how much writing and acting like crossover, and all the sort of, you know like seeing you guys like break the script down, even though like I didn't really like have a good idea of what you guys were doing, like all the questions you were asking, it was sort of like questions that like you should be asking yourself as a writer. And I'm lucky that like in the year prior I was like in a lot of writers communities essentially, and people were challenging me. And I feel like with all that, when I met you guys, I was like able to give you what you needed, sort of thing. But I didn't really realize that you guys would be sort of asking the same questions that writers usually do. So that was really interesting.
Just aligning with the, yeah, story.
Yeah, like
Well,
even
you had a very clear um vision and idea. Like you knew what you wanted to get. You just knew, and that made us know that we could trust and melt into that and find a way to mesh with that. So I appreciated that.
Oh, I'm glad. All the writing has been paying off. That comment that you made about, like, the scene should start somewhere and then end somewhere different. That's really simple stuff, but it's stuff that, like, not a lot of people tell you. Like, I almost feel like an actor would be a better teacher in, like, a writing class than, like, a writing professor sort of thing. I feel like a lot of my writing education has been like me unlearning all the things that I had been taught. That's what's like helped me the most, and that's like one of those things that's like really, it's really easy to say, so it's not good for like a sort of class setting, but it's just so, I don't know what the word is, like applicable. Like it's so easy to just implement that and understand it, but you don't really hear it in writing class.
Mm, it's interesting. I would have thought that you'd cover that.
No, no. No, I think so. The formal classes I've attended have been more sort of analysis based, and that's just not like where you want to tackle a script from as a writer. You don't want to be analyzing stuff that doesn't exist yet.
I guess in the same way, like the overall story will have a beginning, middle, climax, and end. Each scene has a beginning, a middle, a climax, and an end. Just smaller chunks.
Yeah, I mean that's again it sounds so simple, but like you don't often you're not often like forced to think about that at the beginning. It's you think very like broad strokes, and I just find that doesn't help, especially when you know all the broad strokes are made up of all these little strokes, and you just don't know how to do the little strokes. So it's like, okay, so you've got like the beginning, middle, end, 3 act thing going for the whole thing, but like all the scenes are like a waste of time. So yeah.
How much time did you spend thinking about what was driving each of the characters?
Quite a bit as far as like what was being presented in the scene, but um you and Shane definitely asked me like a lot more questions than I was expecting about like past events and like weighing the past events. And again, being a writer, you're so used to people like if people ask you a question during feedback, it's sort of like a, I forget what they're called, but it's like a question that's not rhetorical. It's not meant to be answered. You're meant to take that away. Like you're never meant to discuss your work. That's sort of like you need to take
Mm,
feedback and just shut up, sort of thing. And
mm.
so again, like being able to talk with you and Shane and like being forced to go a bit deeper, and I think sometimes you guys went like way more deeper than me. I was sort of just like, what? I'm allowed to talk. I'm supposed to be talking to you guys. I'm not used to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember we went into a lot of the father stuff with my character. And for me, I find it really important to fill in a lot of that backstory, especially given our circumstance with the crossroads and a lot of what was happening for her was a result of her past. So I felt like that needed some specifics.
hmm but we even went like I remember you wanted to buy a ring, and I think you sort of like did that, like all of that sort of thing was like in your head. I mean, I'm curious. What did
I don't feel like that was like in my head thing. I would still, because you sort of went, well, why is the character different to you? But if I'm playing a lawyer, actually, I'm giving that as an example, but
Yeah, yeah.
Maggie had, Leanne, don't dress like a lawyer every day. So there's going to be things that are different that I would, they're characterizations. They're not, that's not what drives the character, but it can influence how you feel, how you talk, how you walk, who that character has become. Often, people like to wear the shoes that someone would wear, or there's examples of start with the underwear.
Wow.
What underwear would your character wear? That's going to affect your character and what. So I know it seemed weird to you, but for me, it informs a little bit more of the story about who this character is. I do happen to have some jewelry on now, but I don't really wear much jewelry. But, does she and why? And what does she get out of that?
I'm curious, like, what did you come up with as far as the ring?
Yeah. You weren't like, in the end, I didn't go and find something for her. I think it came down to a time thing, and you sort of put the question of, well, why is it any different? And so I allowed that to just be okay. Maybe that is a part of me that I just bring, and that's fine.
Hmm.
Maybe if there was a wardrobe budget,
Gotcha.
then wardrobe would have taken care of that. I actually wouldn't be turning up with any of my stuff on the day.
Yes, that makes so much sense.
So I would still consider all those questions and probably ask, oh, I wonder what rings this character would wear.
I mean, it's funny because like I think there's one shot where it's like quite prominent, and like
I
I've
saw
thought
it.
about it from time to time. Like, you know what I mean? So it's working. It worked.
To me too. It really do. And I went, oh, that's fine. Yeah, yeah, that's cool. I buy that in that moment for her. It didn't bother me.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one else other than us two will look at that and think anything of it. Mm.
I love it because there's so I mean, and also with your performances, like they were very sort of, oh my gosh, I actually really want to talk about this because I didn't talk about it on the day because we were in the mix of it. But I was always saying, like, I want this project to sort of be like very three-dimensional. It's sort of simple on paper, but like you and Shane both had these like crazy things that we had been discussing that's just never going to come, like it's never going to be in the scene. But there's going to be like ideas of other things that the audience can interpret however they want. There
Mm.
was I think it was like so close. This was so close to the end of shooting, and like you had just sort of, I think you had just like sort of come to an understanding with what Shane was trying to do, and you went, oh wait, in that case, if that's the case, then like then he's not that bad of a guy or something. Do you remember making like a comment like that?
Mm. Is that at like 3 in the morning?
It was at 3 in the morning, yeah, on the last day.
It was uh, lucky you'd done my close-ups the night before because that was um yeah, oh yeah, okay, you remember
It's
better than I do.
basically like something had clicked in that, like I felt like you understood like the
Yeah,
motivations. Shane was coming in like so we had done rehearsals, we'd done the first day and we did the second day, and right at the end of the
primary
second
click
day,
right at the end, of course. Yeah.
yeah, like I mean, not that you had like a perfect grasp of your character, but like it's almost like whatever we were doing, whatever I was doing with Shane had like sort of just like started to bleed um into your brain at the end of it, which that was like a really good sign for me because I was like, okay, you're not really seeing how the final edit is going to be, but like something, just like a smidge of something came through, and you sort of started to see like a three-dimension to Shane's character, which that made me feel like, oh god, we're on the right track, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and you had a specific sense about how you wanted the pacing, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's come across.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I guess it's like a bit abnormal because that sound edit that I showed you was just so different to like what I was imagining, and I thought I was being a bit silly maybe, but I wanted you and Shane to give me your feedback because you guys were the only ones that was sort of like in my brain.
Mm,
And you both sort of said the exact same thing, which is like there's too much sort of extra effects. Like we need the
mm.
silence. So in my head, I'm like, oh shit,
Do
have I
you?
gone too far? But lucky I had, we three had like formed such a close collaboration that you guys were able to put me back on track.
Yeah, you. I'm glad about that. And now thinking about that sound and no, you know, disrespect whatsoever, it's a process to the initial version that we all do. My first instinct when I listened to it was um I mean it stood out, and you actually don't want to even know that the sound is happening.
Yep.
If it's catching my, I knew we were listening to it for sound, but it's still sort of stuck out in a way that I feel like it was grabbing my attention, but not in the right way. And I had mentioned that it felt a bit old fashioned or old school or like just of another time,
Yeah.
not modern, how we're used to doing things today. And yesterday I was actually doing research for this upcoming audition, and I watched some scenes from In Treatment, which I think it said it was like early 2000s or 2010. And the sound that I heard in that was the sound that I heard in that example that you had showed us. And I went, it's like that. And I went, that's not what we're going for.
Yeah. Exactly.
It just so old school. I was like, no, that's like what? Like, no.
It's
So anyway,
it definitely has its place. I obviously like I hadn't been able to like really communicate as much as like I would have liked to with the sound mixer. But yeah, it was just like I'm just so glad that you guys both echoed it because it was sort of undoing the nuance and the that part of your performance and Shane's performance where it was like not meant to be overt. It was like the music was sort of saying like this is what's happening, and you
it
know
was trying to explain. Mm.
yes, yes, that's a good way of putting it.
And that's kind of making the assumption that the audience isn't smart enough to figure it out. Audiences are really smart. We pick up things very quickly. So it doesn't need to be spelt out.
Yeah, and I
Mm.
mean there's a because of that there's a few awkward silences I want to say, but again I think that's I think that's important to just get the audience to think like, well, what is going on? Like, is this as bad as it seems, or I don't know.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
um, so you've got this audition coming up. You've done a short film. What exactly do you sort of like look for in a project before taking it on, Leanne?
Whether there could be something interesting that I like in telling the story and the character, stepping into the character. Is it something I want to explore? That would be the main thing. Or is there something interesting about the project that I'd like to know more about?
Hmm. Does that sort of, is it sort of the idea behind the script, or is there, I guess, if you see a script, can that sort of change things to like, because I guess a script is a bit more than like an idea. Like if I tell you about a project, and there's an idea there or a lack of idea there, and then I show you a script, does that give you something different, or is it sort of like walking the same path as like the through line that you want to explore?
So at the moment with the audition, I only have two scenes.
Gotcha.
You know, I have no idea what the whole script is like. I can only, yes,
Gotcha.
based around the two scenes that I have in front of me and the little concept, maybe story synopsis. I start there, and then it's really lovely that this particular opportunity is a face-to-face audition. So once I meet the people, they'll obviously, um, they've got their idea and direction. So I get to explore that. And then, it's this double-edged sword. As actors, we just want to work as well.
Mm.
I feel like with this particular project, for me to do it, I'm going to want to love it and want to step into it and feel like that it's the right thing. I don't feel like I need to do things. I choose not to do things anymore that really don't speak to me in some way.
And how do you prepare for something? 'Cause I didn't realize it was just two scenes because everything that we just talked about. It's like you really go deep and you're looking into the character years before they appear on
Mm.
screen. How do you how does your process change with just two scenes?
I have to make all that up. I still have to ask all those questions. So I've still been thinking about that for myself. What's brought her? So she's a psychiatrist. Uh, what led her to that? What problems has she had in her life? She's dealing with just in terms of paralleling with the script. Um, I was in yoga the other day and I had this moment of thinking, oh, maybe my character does yoga to cope with all the other stuff that's going on in her life. It just caught like, it came to me while I was in yoga and I went, no, she probably just drinks.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Right. So everyone's got their different way of coping.
Yeah.
I go to yoga. She probably drinks. She comes home and has the glass of white wine or whatever in the evening, maybe. So I'm finding that I am still creating a backstory to bring life on the day, and it needs to support the material that I have. I'm not just, I mean, you have to use your imagination to fill in the backstory. We're often just not given a lot of, you know, all the information. So you just create it. And it just needs to fill holes. So, what it does is it allows you to have one moment or inner thought that brings life behind your eyes. The audience might not know what it is, but if you're seeing it and feeling it, they pick up on it.
Mhm.
So it just adds layers to bring life.
Again, I think this is great stuff for like a writing class. I've read a lot of like older scripts, 1990s and pre, and from about the 2010s and onwards, there's a lot of sort of prose writing that you might find in like a novel. Not a lot, but it's there in spots, and it sort of does the job of what you just said. Whereas like in earlier scripts, they were really like just a blueprint of what we're gonna shoot. Now every now and then I find myself like reading like a passage where I'm like, wait a second, this I thought you weren't allowed to write stuff like this. But then I think about it, the more I think about it, I'm like, I think an actor would really appreciate that.
Yeah, right. Like you mean sort of a bit of exposition where you're explaining what's going on?
You're explaining something that can never be filmed. It can be filmed, but it's like it's not going to be a one for one. Like you might say when a character walks in for the first time, it's like this is so and so. this is what she's feeling right now, and you know, she's not going to meditate about it. She's going to have a drink. Like, even if she never has a drink, like,
That's
even if
right.
we cut
Like,
before that, you know what I mean? Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, you know, as a, you know, I imagine as a director or like filmmaker 30 years ago, you're just reading that thinking like, how is this fucking relevant to me? But then these days it's like, it's super relevant. Like the best scripts always have a little flavor or spice to them like that. Yeah. That's again super interesting that it's sort of like aligns. Do you find, I guess, with like, I feel like with a bigger script it's a lot harder to for the director to sort of tick every box and have every sort of facet of the backstory filled. Do you think that there's a lot more room for an actor to, you know, bring their sort of vision as well to the project?
oh, 100%. And I don't think it's necessarily the writer's job to fill in every character's backstory. I'm not sure that that really actually happens that much anyway. It is our jobs. So I think it's just another layer of our jobs. And not all actors necessarily approach the material in that way either. Some probably never even think about it. Although I think most probably do. You know, different people have ways in, like a lot of people might journal or write diary sort of entries, or every actor. And I don't think every actor has the same process for every script either, you see. So I might work on your project one way and on another project in an entirely different way. It's just a bit of a feel your way through it process and see what comes up. So even if I did a different process from yours to this one, it doesn't mean it's not gonna it's just a different way in.
Hmm.
Not necessarily better or worse, just different. Hopefully with the same as like with the intention to produce, work that hopefully moves people in some way.
Gotcha.
Uh, but now I've forgotten your actual question. What was your question?
Yeah, basically, like, do you find there's more room to bring, you were saying that character, you know, she wouldn't go to yoga, she would have a drink, like to wind down. Do you feel like there's more room for that sort of thing in like bigger productions, and do you feel like, you know, directors and cast are like more receptive to that sort of
I
layering?
think um I think all directors are different as well. Some are more open to hearing that stuff and some are just not interested. And some communicate with actors in ways that then an actor needs to go, okay, how do I take that direction and bring that to life? Rather than be louder there or whatever. It's like, okay, well, being loud for the sake of being loud is not going to really affect anyone. What would make my character in that moment? Why would they be louder? What's driving that? To then, as a result, they're just louder. So some directors communicate, you've probably heard the term, it's a actor's director.
Hmm.
And so they may or may not be more open to hearing about some of the backstory. And then others just maybe they just not, it's not their thing, so they don't care, which blows my mind. I'm like, what? How can you not care? But it's just not like, people come to their creative process differently, so they've got whatever is going on in their process in their mind, and that's what they feel is needed to make their project come to life. So everyone's just got their own way of handling things.
You said like, 'cause we had done quite a few rehearsals, and I was a little bit surprised to hear that your own chains experience was that you don't often get a chance to do many rehearsals before shooting. Um,
Mm.
I mean, how does that sort of does that do rehearsals sort of tie into that process that you were just talking about? And I mean, why aren't there more rehearsals? And what do they do for you?
Usually on a, not the right word, on a proper, on a like a film or a project that's got, say, a budget, and they're in, everything's costs money, right?
Mhm.
And there's deadlines and schedules and big expenses. So rehearsals really comes down to time and money. So often they just don't have the time and money. And so it is a bit of a luxury to have a rehearsal period. It's, look, most of the time you'll find yourself on set with other actors that are equally as passionate and into what they do. And so if you find those people, you can say, hey, you want to quickly run the scene. And if you do all your prep work and your homework and you've sort of found all of that, then you don't need to try and find it on the day.
Yeah,
There's just not enough time. Like things have to move very quickly. And so I find the more prep you can do beforehand and bring that with you, yeah, you don't need to just try and find it on the day. And usually, I don't know, I've been fortunate enough to just be with other people that we just love what we do. So they're just so like excited, like are happy. Let's run lines. Yep, cool, great. Let's just do it. Let's drill it. And there's enough time in between while everything's being set up and to do that. Mm. And I even found on one of the other projects I did recently, you're just meeting people for the first time. This is my father. Okay. And so I had a quick chat about what I felt like, interestingly, what I felt like our history was and why my character was the way she was. Because I felt like she wasn't loved by her father and she was constantly trying to get his approval. And actually, that was the one thing that I had decided that was the driver for her for the entire series. Consciously, totally unconscious to her. She doesn't know that. You don't know that that's the thing that drives you, as I don't. But that's what drove her. And then it made it very easy to understand why she did what she did.
gotcha.
And I know that when I went up to that actor, he even mentioned it out loud to the director. He was so grateful and appreciative that the first thing I did went up, had a chat, and said, "Hey, great to meet you. This is great. This is what I'm thinking about our relationship." So he appreciated it. Helps him. We get to understand each other a bit more. Mm. And then maybe it doesn't matter. The director, he's working really fast or whatever. But me and the other actor can use that.
Absolutely. That's what I was trying to get at before. Asking, is there more room for that on a sort of bigger project? And I feel like you know that sort of just
You
answered
have to
it.
make it.
Yeah.
You have to bring it. And I think it's really important for actors to not shy away from being bold or claiming space and saying, hey, I've got this idea. Can we try it? And usually a director will say yes. They've got a couple of takes up their room for a couple of takes up their sleeves. And I think it usually goes like maybe one for one for how they see it, one for how you see it, and then, the third one or whatever.
Yep.
Mm. I think if you genuinely have an idea that you really feel suits it, you have the right to speak up and say, can I please just try this?
Hmm.
And I think they will actually appreciate that because the actor is the one that has spent more time than anyone, even more than the writer or the director, thinking about their character.
Well, that's what I noticed with you and Shane. I felt like, you know, there's never been like more of a moment with a film where I felt like other people were like taking more of a weight off my shoulders.
Mm,
And I was like, oh my gosh, like you guys are us, you guys are prompting me to, you know, make make the shoot more streamlined or like have be more decisive or like you're just being like this is what I think and then I'm like oh that sounds great like boom now I don't have to think about that anymore. So like I definitely appreciated that even though there weren't that many like there wasn't much room for that because it was like you can call it a short or whatever but really it was just like it was one scene. So there was we didn't get to attack so many different things from so many different angles. It was just this one thing.
mm,
But I really did feel like you and Shane like took a big weight off my shoulders by bringing so much to it.
mm,
And I mean, I've never worked with, especially as a director, I've never worked with such established actors. So that was, I felt like I really got like a peek into that process, which I hadn't before.
mm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed working with you. I loved it.
Likewise.
Mm,
Um,
yeah, we'll do it again.
I hope so. I hope so. Gosh, it was one thing that you just prompted from the shoot. You reminded me of a moment that I wanted to touch on, but it's escaping me. No, no. Oh gosh, I'm gonna sit here awkwardly for a moment.
Do that.
Gosh, it was like is another one of those moments where like something clicked. Oh yes, yes. The you remember when we were doing like you loading the revolver like on set, and that was
Yeah,
like a little bit clunky.
yeah.
What do you think about like the like seeing it? Did it feel clunky when you saw it?
Oh, I was a bit critical watching some of the things, but I'm aware that, that's just me being critical of myself and maybe not. Um, I actually really loved the bit where it's loaded,
Mm.
actually, and then she turns around. For me, then I wish I was standing up straighter. There's like, so why am I standing like this? Like I really needed to come up. Should be standing up. So I look at that and sort of, um, but in terms of the loading,
Hmm.
I actually love that bit how it came out.
Yeah, I'm glad.
I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I'm the same. I just remember being like, oh man, like I hope like Leanne, I hope this is like because I remember just being on the set like, no, 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 just trust me. Like you don't have to get it right. Like because I just remember you being like, oh, this feels really clunky. Like I can't do it, and I'm just like, no, I think it's not going to matter in the end. And I think
Yeah,
yeah, I think it came out that way.
it didn't. It came out. It came out. Yeah. Actually, it was interesting watching it back. There's a lot of things I go, okay, I don't want to plant seeds for any of the people that will end up watching it, but
Hmm.
I look at things and go, oh, okay, that needed just like the slightest glance. Or like, just to the pillow. I move the pillow and I go, you didn't even look at the pillow. Okay, oh, there was a slight head move. Okay, no, we can maybe buy that. And I was like, there's just a couple of those moments that me is very, very particular.
You more than ever before, I really thought about because of you rewatching takes back. Can you sort of like you know just give me like the rundown on your philosophy when it comes to like rewatching the takes on set? Because um I've never had an actor prompt me to do that, and
Mm.
Like, what do you get from it? How does that sort of help your process? Because I think you sort of just started to touch on it.
Yeah, for me, it's really valuable. A lot of people don't like watching themselves back. I don't. I mean, I know I'm sounding critical, but I use it as a opportunity to learn and see. I often can see by watching myself. Oh, that's what I need to do, or that's missing. And I most of the time you don't have the luxury to watch things back. When I got to watch it back with you, it gave me just a little bit of peace of mind that in that one that we'd watch, like, okay, so it's not coming across too much on my face in a particular way or whatever. So then I can just relax and go and just be in it. So in that moment, I remember that was more, I just wasn't sure how it was coming across. So it helped me in that way. And then other times it's like I can see what might be needed further in the scene.
Yeah.
Mm.
The little
So now
things.
I wish we could go back, like after I'd watched and went,
Yeah.
oh, now I need to go back and we just need to redo that and redo that and redo that.
Yeah. There were
But
so many little moments like that as well that I was saying like, oh man, I really want to use this take for that. But then it's weird because like I edited the film and then I would go back and be like, no, 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 there's another take of this where that was better. And then like I try to like I'll put the take in and then I remember I've already checked this take and like yeah that little thing is better in this take but then all this
yeah,
big thing becomes like unusable like so I
yeah,
was playing that game myself like in post just second guessing but
yeah,
then always being like no this is giving me the most sort of bang for my buck and
yeah.
again thinking of like what you were saying on set like if we had more time we could have gotten all those little nuance like glances or like little movements because
Mm, mm.
yeah you don't really know what's going to come up on the big screen especially when you've got number one you've got like a little viewfinder but then when you're not even watching it yeah
What you were just talking about, your editing process and going and checking all the takes, that is how like self-taping now is for me, because most of our auditions are done via self-tape. And you can just do your trying to you think, oh, I'll take it for that one moment, but then you might, like, the overall one for whatever reason might be a different take.
yeah
Yeah, so just, yeah, I understand that process.
how does how do you how did you basically get to where you are now as far as like your acting chops like what I don't want to say like what should a new person do but like how did you sort of like become well knowledged in acting
You've got to start with the desire to want to do it, and then you go and you take classes and you learn and you do and you just get in there and get out there. And what I say to most young people starting, I feel like I didn't have the same thing said to me, yeah, at the time. But well, with me, I did, like, way back when I would have said, well, I say, go and do as many short films as you can. For me now, it would be very, very, very rare for me to actually do a short film. So the reason why I did your short film was because Shane called me up.
hmm
Otherwise, I sort of stopped doing short films a long time ago.
yeah
Um, and then I liked you. I liked the story. I'm not shy to also say, like, it was a paid job.
yeah
Most films aren't a paid job.
yeah
There has to be something very strong pulling me to do a short film now.
yeah
And truthfully, I'm really not going to do one that's not paid.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just too old. I've been doing this forever.
yeah,
I've put my life into it. Like at some point we have to stop. I don't even do unpaid theatre work now. It's just this industry,
yeah,
and and actors aren't valued because there's a million other people that'll do it for free.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
I
what I
mean,
would say to someone starting out, though, just to finish that off, is go and do as many short films as you can. Just keep doing them. Do the student films. That's where you're going to learn without stepping on too many toes, without like ruining your reputation in the industry while you're learning,
yeah,
because you're not sort of going to big auditions for feature films with well-known directors and then sort of learning there and stuffing it up, and then they won't call you back for years,
yeah,
right? Yeah. So, and then the other thing I would say to people now, which I regret not doing, uh, just start making your own stuff. Just and never stop.
yeah,
Get together with your acting friends. You might not be the writer, someone else might be, or just start writing even if you crap at it and you get better, but never stop. Just make one and then make another one. More people use their phones, whatever. Um, it's how you learn. And a lot of people that we know who they are now weren't given opportunities and they just went out and created their own.
yeah,
And I feel like if I could have my time again, I'm way back 20 whatever years ago. I started with some friends. First one sort of bombed, and then no one wanted to step on each other's toes because I think it was just the wrong mix of people. And then never did another one again.
yeah,
Instead of going, oh, well, just don't worry about offending people or whatever. Just go and make another one somehow or write. Mm. And even if you feel like you're not a writer, because I don't necessarily feel like I'm a writer, but I feel like now either give it a go, or I've got friends that are really good writers, so I'm collaborating with them now.
yeah.
So I feel like I'm doing now what maybe, you know, could have been helpful to have just started a long time ago.
I think the actors definitely have like an edge to writing. Like, you know, the more I do writing, the more I realize like we're sort of tackling projects where, you know, the stuff that we talk about in meetings, it's all very sort of actor based. It's not film because I mean, I don't know if it's because the industry's changed, but it's like the way that you get movies, the way that you get scripts sold is by essentially, but the way you create your career is by writing scripts for actors essentially, and you've got to have all that, you know, all the stuff that you were talking about earlier. You've got to have that in mind. So I feel like actors are sort of primed more than anyone actually. Like I realize that, you know, in the auditions and the rehearsals, I was like, actors are like a writer's biggest ally. Like that's like I never felt anyone else really, you know, cut through all the words to get to what I was trying to get to. And that's, I mean, that's your whole job. Now I realized.
Yeah.
Um, and to go back to the your sort of philosophy on paid and unpaid work, I just realized like at some point, if I'm not like offering, if I'm not offering to pay, it sort of sends a message about like what type of production it's going to be, what type of project it's going to be, how much I value the project. And it's like, well, I started to get a sense that if things weren't paid or weren't paid to like a certain level, people would look at it and be like, well, like I've been there, done that, and that's just a waste of time. And then you sort of attract people that are not gonna elevate your project. Um, yeah. So I
Yeah.
totally get that.
Mm. It means you're serious about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then I mean, I take all my work seriously anyway, but it adds an extra layer of responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, and as I think as creatives, we're fighting with that voice one way or the other. It's like, no, we're doing this because we're passionate and blah blah blah. But then it's also like, okay, but like that guy has more passion because there's more money. Like there's more, if you're putting this much money, it's sort of like you're saying, I'm putting this much of myself, and it's like, well, I want to work with that. I want to bring my energy to that.
Yeah.
I realized that's what it was. Yeah,
Mm,
it's so true.
brilliant. Mm.
Um, the end before we sort of start winding down, I want to get I want to hear some stories from your time in LA.
Oh, wow, that was a long time ago. What LA showed me is two things mainly. How many people are really there on the ground trying to make it?
Hmm.
It blows your mind. You don't realize until you're there that everyone is there to try to make it. And then anyone that's not an actor is there to sell something to the actor to help them try to make it.
Gotcha.
There's another outside business that's happening. The other thing that it showed me is that you really can actually make it or be on your way to making it. It just takes a bit of time.
Hmm.
I unfortunately could only stay a year due to some things that had to pull me back to Australia. Otherwise, I would have seen myself there for a long time. I had a visa that would have allowed me to stay, I think, for 3 years, 2 or 3 years. So, um, in that year, I got some really good rep. I did a few smaller sort of projects. I was getting out and auditioning. I was taking meetings. I was taking classes. I loved all of it. Yeah, so I feel like, and I've had friends that are there and they've worked, and yeah, if you've got a dream and you can get there and do it, go pursue your dream. Like, go try it out. Yeah.
You you've worked. I mean, just stalking your IMDb, you've worked on some like bigger projects, and were they like? Was that while you were in LA at that moment in time, or like were they Australian productions? I don't
Um,
actually know.
One of the American projects that was, I hadn't gone yet, had I? No. That was shot in Australia, but an American production done in Australia. Um, no, the ones there were I don't even know if they're on IMDb. I can't help you there. A lot of yeah, most of it here, I'd say.
Got oh, okay, gotcha. Like they would come here, or like they would cast here and take you somewhere else.
Absolutely. No, we constantly have American projects being shot in Australia.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know how it was in film back then, but say 20 years ago, for example, in the advertising world, because I've done bucket loads of ads over my 20 whatever years, when I first started, I think Australia must have had lots of tax breaks and incentives for international people to come, and the Australian dollar was favorable, to the American dollar, like favorable for them to come and produce things here. So a lot of the Americans would come and shoot their ad campaigns in Australia.
Oh wow.
And so yeah, and so I think it was sort of around the December, January, end of year, beginning. I think they'd come for summer,
Mm,
get rid of out of their winter and come for our summer. And so I remember always going, "Oh, the Americans are coming, the Americans are coming," because they paid really well. I love them. I've just always loved Americans. I think I just grew up, wanting to be in the world of entertainment, and
yeah.
so I've always had like an appreciation for Americans and um yes. So I was really fortunate to work with a whole bunch really early on, and I just loved it.
And you, I mean, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but I think I heard you talking about, or like I read somewhere, like a little excerpt that you wrote on working with, is it Peter Badanovich? Like
Yeah, Bogdanovich.
you
Amazing.
like working with like bigger names, more established people. Like, how does that sort of like influence your attitude toward your craft, if that makes sense?
Hmm. He was quite influential at the time for me because he was lovely. He's since passed, but he was like just a legend, an institution. He do you know anything about him? He was he I think Sybil Shepherd was like in one of his first films, The Last Picture Show. I think he was flatmates with Orson Welles, not at uni or something, I don't know. And Tatum O'Neill won like an Oscar for one of his films, so like he was old school Hollywood.
Yeah.
Um, and if I'm getting all those details right, I think I am. And he was just such a lovely gentleman and so supportive of my work and encouraged me, and just really he knew how to direct actors. He I yeah, I really cherished my time with him on set. So yeah, that definitely left me with a positive sort of sense of the work and me and what I was bringing at the time and what I can bring.
Did it sort of give you a confidence in like future work, like future works, future projects, or like?
Yeah, it did at the time. Yeah, it did. I mean, absolutely. But the thing is, you go from doing something like that, and then I think straight after I had an audition, I was pretty young at the time. I
Mhm.
had another audition for another big feature film opposite some really big stars.
Mhm.
And like I just bombed the audition. So, you can go from, because it doesn't mean that I couldn't have played that role. Of course I could. I hadn't found my way in. See, what was interesting about the audition for that particular project is I worked with the right person. I'd found exactly the hook that got me, and so I knew there was no question when I went into that audition room, I had embodied that character. So when I find that little lock piece to the puzzle that unlocks me, it just lives within me in a very grounded, easy, unquestioning way. And so for me, it's like, have I found that piece? And in that, it's a process. And like I said, either I hadn't worked with the right coach on that particular job, um, or I didn't have enough time to prep or whatever. And so then I'm not going to bring my best level of work on that day. Doesn't mean I'm a bad actor.
Yeah.
Like, it just means in that moment I just couldn't get there because I hadn't found that piece for myself that unlocked it.
Gotcha.
So it's not that it didn't give me confidence as an actor. It's like acting is, there's just highs and lows.
Yeah.
You feel really good when you book a job, but like for every one job that you book, there's 10 that you haven't.
Mhm.
And so are you going to feel really bad about yourself? Like,
Yeah.
it's pretty full on. You need to endure a lot of rejection, like a lot. It's like going for a job interview every day and not getting the job. And you need to find a way to navigate that and not take any of it personally.
Gotcha.
And that's hard,
Yeah. Absolutely. And
especially when you feel like you've put a lot into it, or you have, been vulnerable, or but the thing that keeps you going is that real deep love for what you do and that desire to want to do it, and not really being able to do anything else with your life.
yeah, 100%.
But
Like,
going.
there's been so many people that have sort of come and gone, and I've heard this phenomenon talked about before, but if you can just, I feel like if you can just sort of want it enough so that you can endure the suffering that it takes to build that thick skin, then after that, it's sort of like
Mm.
you just understand,
Oh
you're
yeah,
gonna,
just another day
yeah,
as a doctor. Yeah.
exactly. Well said.
Mm.
Um, all right, Leanne, that's, we've hit the end of my prompts. Um, I don't know if there's anything left to talk about. Do you feel like there's a little something that you want to touch on before we call this?
Nothing, Michael. Just it's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Love connecting again,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
looking forward to hearing all the new installments.
Yeah, I can't wait for you guys to get to watch it before the month is out. So I'm looking forward to sharing it with you.
Yeah, amazing.
Awesome. Thanks for indulging me here, Leanne. It was really fun just sort of catching up as well. So
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. Thanks, Michael.